So Nikki, welcome.
Thank you.
Good to see you this morning.
Good to see you.
So why don't you just tell me a little bit about, your career path to date, your journey to becoming, a business leader, coach, consultant, pivotal moment. That would be a good starting point.
Sure. So I started out in college studying psychology because it was just interesting to me. But when I talked to, counselors about what I could do with that job, I said, I don't want to be a counselor. I don't want to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist or, a school counselor. What can I do with this? And they kind of, shrugged their shoulders at me like, well, that's what you do with this degree. So friends of mine were starting a technology company, and I, raised my hand with them to say, hey, I'll learn whatever you need me to learn. I want to be part of what you're doing. I believe in you guys. And so that kind of started my path toward information technology. And then, just kind of sailed through, learned tons of things with that company, a small company. We got acquired, and I ended up continuing in the technology space for over 20 years. And until I had someone that I work with, she was trying to get out of a project, and I couldn't figure out what was happening. We had this conversation about what it was that she was trying to get out of. And when she left that conversation with me, she was inspired about the project and excited about it. And I thought, what was that conversation? That was fun. And I want to do more of that. And she actually came back to me because one of the things that she was very gifted at was seeing other people's gifts. And so what she said to me was, that was a coaching conversation and you're really good at it. You should look into it. And that opened up a whole new door for me. And I started going that direction. I got a certification as a coach and continued to work that way. And so when I had the opportunity to, move more full-time into that kind of learning and coaching space, that's what I did.
So what is it about coaching that you like to do?
I feel like helping people move from that stuck or stubborn place into seeing possibilities, helping people, get to those moments where they have an aha or a shift in something that's got them, that they can't see around.
And do you think you've been a coach for quite a long time, but you just didn't know that you were?
I think so. Solving puzzles has always been something that's really lit me up and figure things out, and helping people do that for themselves. Helping people just by brainstorming and telling them, what I've heard from them has always been something, but I never really put it together as a job and a skill that I could use until this woman said to me, hey, this is what that was. And I think you should look into it because I think you were really good at it. And it really did completely change the way I looked at, things that came naturally to me and where I really wanted to pursue a career.
So when you were in the technology business, did you find that you were most effective during your 20-year career there when you were being a coach?
I think so. I think a lot of what made me really successful in technology was my ability to translate between business needs and wants into technical language and into a way that the technology teams could understand. And so I also became aware that was something that not a lot of technologists were able to do. But that sort of translating and helping people see, here's what the business is saying, but here's how technology needs to hear that in order to get them what they want. And so I was most successful when I was able to help people overcome obstacles that way, help kind of solve the puzzle and do the translation between this is what they're saying and this is how that needs to look, or are we sure that we're all on the same page, and kind of helping bring those teams together.
Yeah, so really playing the role of facilitator.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is what I've seen you do, whether it's between Leon and Ryan or me and Ryan, for instance, or generally in the team. You're good at distilling down what the vision is to helping us get to the reality of execution steps.
Yeah.
And getting people to communicate.
Yeah, I mean, I love being able to just ask questions to help people see things, because I can see pretty quickly where people's kind of thought pattern is. And sometimes people are in the room kind of violently agreeing with each other and not really realizing that that's what's happening. And so being able to just choose a little bit different words, helping that tiny shift happen so that everybody can get on the same page and move forward and get to a goal is something that I've been good at for a long time and now can really lean into, that I have some language around what it is that I'm doing and how I'm doing it.
And do you prefer facilitating or coaching a team or individuals one-on-one, for instance, the leader or a key executive one-on-one?
That's a really good question. I enjoy both. They're very different skills, and it's a very different way to hold space. So one-on-one can be really intense, and you can start to see changes pretty quickly. I would say I really enjoy working with teams because I think the impact can be bigger. But it also requires kind of some different skills and kind of looking at what's happening in the system and not just with each individual. And so I'm working on kind of expanding more into that area, because I do think that there are things that teams can do for sure that individuals can't do alone, and that bringing a whole team together to make a shift is super rewarding, but can take a little bit longer and takes a little bit different skill to help that shift happen.
It's a bigger engagement at the end
for
of the
sure.
day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and probably some of your independence can get lost by being tied into the organization versus the individual. There are lots of issues. So, well, we'll see whether you become Wendy Rhodes.
Yeah.
All right. So Nikki, just sort of taking this forward to your business DNA profile results. The results of the discovery. How has seeing that sort of and having that higher level of awareness taken you further forward on your coaching journey?
I told you I was in technology for more than 20 years. And when I saw this report, it explained that last year that I was in the technology team so well and really helped me understand it. Because what happened was I was always raising my hand. I was always doing a new job, a new role, a new thing. Hey, if this needs to happen, I'll do it. I'll do this. I'll try that. So I did several different roles in technology. I did a developer role. I did a quality assurance role. I did a project manager role. I was a software development leader. So I did all of these roles, and I raised my hand, I think, one too many times. I'd always been successful doing that. And when I started on a team that was primarily an operations team versus a development team, so they were kind of shifting into the DevOps model, and my new leaders were more operational, I struggled and I couldn't figure out, I'm good at what I do. I've always been good at what I do. These leaders think I'm terrible at what I do. I am being terrible at what they're asking me to do. And it was a surprise to me, and I couldn't figure it out. And I just kept kind of trying really hard. And no matter what I did, if I managed to make the goal that they had, it was a huge effort from me. And then they would just raise the bar from there. So it was a really difficult struggle. And when I saw my report, I thought, well, duh, no wonder this was a huge struggle. This was an operations role, and I am not designed for operations. I'm really designed more for creative and development. And doing that translation and facilitation work, doing repeatable, precise work was not in my zone of natural talent. And so when I was asked to do that every day over and over again, I struggled a lot. So when I saw this, it helped me realize, one, there was nothing wrong with me. I didn't do anything wrong. I just, selected something that wasn't a good fit for me. But also it helped me really see the potential for helping other people unlock this, because I think, a lot of people go through careers feeling like, they just are never good enough, when in fact, maybe they're just not on the right spot. Maybe they're just not doing the right role. And so what I realized is, not only did this help me kind of make sense of what happened, but if I'd have had this language, I probably could have avoided it. I probably could have gone to my leaders and said, hey, look, I get what you're asking of me. I don't even disagree that this is what you need for this role. I'm never going to be good at this. It's not because I disrespect you. It's not because I don't think you need it. It's not because I don't want to try, but I'm never going to be good at this. Let's find somebody who will be. It could have been a much more graceful exit for me. It could have been a much better experience for my team and for my leaders. And so it really motivates me to help get other people to that same aha and that same, oh, no wonder this isn't working. It's not a deficiency. It's just that I'm in the wrong spot. I just need to move to a spot that more reflects and appreciates the things that I'm naturally good at.
Yeah, I think that's really one of our purposes with having people complete the business DNA discovery, is to uncover their talents and empower them to be able to have that conversation and be able to say, I'm a square peg in a round hole. Let's find a new place for me in the organization, or if need be, if that's not going to be possible, let's have a graceful transition here. I think the same for interviews and things like that as well. But just being specific with your reporting outcomes, what part of the report really told you that you were the square peg in a round hole in this new operations role?
Yeah, so my top two strengths are spontaneous and creative. The opposite of those traits, planned and anchored, are really the skills that operations professionals really need. They need to be precise and detailed and planned out, and they need to be able to repeat things over and over again and be pretty precise. And not really deviate, not try new things, not do things a different way. It really, to make technical operations work, you want to have repeatable, predictable process over and over and over again. And you need to get down into the precision of what exactly caused the issue and how do you make sure that doesn't happen. There's a lot of procedure documents that need to be reviewed and rewritten. None of those things are part of the spontaneous strength or part of the creative strength. Where I shone, and what we talked about earlier, was when people hit an obstacle, I could think my way around that obstacle. I could help people figure out that they were not, I could solve the problem and see that people weren't talking about the same thing. They were talking past each other, and I could help them, connect those dots. Even if it wasn't in the procedure manual, even if they were following the procedure to the letter and they weren't getting the result that they needed, I could help them see where that process was broken and what they needed to do to fix it. And so seeing, spontaneous and creative as my top traits and understanding what that really meant really spoke to me about, well, it's no wonder that a, precise, detail-oriented role that required repetition was really not going to be something that I was going to be long-term very good at.
Yeah, that's the energy drain.
It was.
Really, when we look at this, your style of being a facilitator and being creative really comes back to the facilitation role that you were playing, and an operations role is completely opposite to that.
Indeed.
More or less.
Yeah, it was definitely draining. I can say, I ran into people that I used to work with 6 or 8 months after I left, and they said, you look completely different. You look much healthier now. Have you lost weight? Have you done, and it wasn't really that I had done anything as far as physical changes, but it was just that relief of not having to be something that I wasn't, because it was completely draining. And I didn't realize how much of a drain it was until I stopped being drained that way. And people could see it reflected in my physical appearance.
And what about your personal confidence? How do you think that's been impacted by, this discovery and, in a way, owning up to it?
Yeah, it definitely helped me recover from that blow, because I was fired because I wasn't doing the job that they wanted me to do. And it was a nasty separation. And I struggled with that because I'd always been a top performer. I'd always been high potential. I'd always been good at my job. And now suddenly, less than a year, and I was on a plan and then out the door. And I couldn't, I mean, it was a blow for sure to my confidence. And then seeing this helped me realize this wasn't about what I'm great, I was forced to do something that I'm not great at, and I was never going to be great at. And realizing that, and it really helped me to drive my confidence back up to know, but I am really good at this. I am really, reflect back on my career on times when I was really good at things, and then really start to gravitate more toward work that I was going to be really great at, and partner with people that have that opposite talent that I can work with, and have better conversations about how that goes. Because I think in the past, I probably had some people around me that were good at things. As I reflect, I probably could have delegated some things to some folks on my team that I know were much better suited for that kind of job. But not having this language and not having thought it through, I wasn't even really able to use those resources, because I felt like this was something that I had to understand first before I could delegate. And so this has given me just an opening to say, go find those people that are going to be better at that, and help collaborate with them and maybe grow their careers into something, that they would have been good at. It could have been a much different exit, maybe even me getting some folks that worked for me hired into my position and promoted.
So, assuming you're a round peg in a round hole, what nevertheless is a derailer potentially that could be sitting there that you have to watch each day as you're doing your work?
Yeah. So being that spontaneous and creative, I am a bit of a shiny object chaser. I do say yes to too many things. I do, kind of first in, gets my attention, but then the next thing, and then the next thing, and I sometimes don't circle back to that first thing. And so it's kind of a last in, first out thing for me. And so I do recognize that there are places for process and repeatability and doing things and not having to reinvent things. There are many times in my career that I've reinvented something only to stumble across something that I did 6 months or a year or 2 years ago that solved the problem. And I'm re-solving the problem because I didn't take time to think about, has this been solved already?
I think anyone creative's done that before, and sometimes it's interesting just to backtrack on your work to check on.
Yeah, just to see how much is there. I did that earlier this year and was amazed at some of the things that that I had done in the past that were completely not top of mind anymore, and I had kind of forgotten were even done.
Yeah. So going forward, Nikki, in terms of your identity and who you aspire to be, what do you see? How do you see the world looking at you now?
Yeah, I kind of see my role in the world as a guide and a bit of a facilitator to help people get to those moments of revelation, to guide people to those moments where they have those aha moments, whether it's internal, like I had with my career, or whether it's in relationship with one another, on a team. I really see that as kind of my identity and my driving purpose, is to be that guide, and that leads people to those moments of seeing things in a different way, of shifting things that have them stuck.
And do you see being that guide as having a higher impact, perhaps, than totally using your creative talents in solving problems? Or do you see them together?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that it's I'm guiding people to that first stone throw into a pond, and I think there is a ripple effect, and my intention is for there to be a bigger and bigger ripple effect from, if I can help people understand these things, and they can help the next person, and they can help the next person, or they can even just continue to use this in relationship after relationship after relationship. We might be talking about one relationship today, but in a year, in 2 years, in 3 years, how many relationships might that impact for them? And so I do see this as as part of, can we see each other's strengths? I think too many times we dwell on things that we're not good at. And I could definitely see, had I not been fired, I may have spent years struggling in a role not knowing just figuring that was normal, that's how things had to go. And so I see it as a huge opportunity that I was fired to be able to get out of that. And I'd really like to help other people do the same, because I think there are too many of us that it kind of reminds me of the Einstein had a quote that if you judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree, it'll spend its whole life feeling like it's stupid. And I think that there are a lot of fish out there judging themselves on their ability to climb a tree. And I would love for us to figure out how to see each other's strengths better.
Yeah. So if I just recast that a bit, being the guide to others, to helping them see their strengths and be the best of themselves, is really the number one thing for you in terms of your identity, as opposed to perhaps just creative problem solving for a team. Designing solutions, because I bring that up because when you work with us, you do both of those very well. But if you think about how you want to be perceived in the world, one might stand over the other. It doesn't mean one's completely eliminated, but it's like me with my coming out and really realizing that for me being the king of the behavioral insights and really working on that's where my greatest impact to DNA is, as opposed to necessarily being a facilitator.
Right.
Myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that for me personally, it's fulfilling to solve puzzles and solve problems. But I do think that my calling in the world is to be bigger than that. And so, because there's only so many problems I can solve personally, but to help other people figure out where their zone of genius is, and to help other people figure out how to unlock those things, and then continue that and pass that on, I think is really a driver for why I do what I do. I'll still enjoy solving puzzles, but that's a limited scope.
So if we link purpose to it, being the guide is important.
Yeah.
And the solving the puzzle is the secondary part.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because I think this is an important, I think, thing for everybody to realize, those things for themselves. It's not just the talent, but is how do you want to be seen out there in the world, and what do you got to do to aspirationally to be seen and positioned in that way.
Yeah.
And I think that's always important to recognize. So where do you feel most significant? Like when you're working with us, doing projects with us, and with clients, sort of what makes you feel significant? Or what do we need to do to make you feel significant?
No, I do. I think it's when I'm helping people connect with each other, connect with their ideas, unlock something bigger than what each of them had individually, is where I feel like I'm really working in the zone that I'm supposed to be in. So helping people kind of unlock that potential and unlock something a little bit bigger than just the relationship between the two of them, or just the one idea and the translation of it.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's good. So just to wrap up, what's the impactful book that you've read recently that we should have other people reading, including me?
Let me think. So I'm reading a book right now on thinking for yourself, and it's really about. I'll have to send you the title. I don't remember what it is right now. Thinking by Design or something like that, or maybe it's just called Think for Yourself. But it's essentially how much are you relying on expert opinion, and how much are you digging into what is that, what is the experience of that expert, and is it really slanted? We've gotten fairly polarized in the way that we think about things. And so it's really about it's about critical thinking skills. What else are you looking at? What other sources are you looking at? Where else can you derive information? Are we thinking critically about things, and are we advocating for ourselves in that way? And I think it's an interesting read, especially in times that are so polarizing, to, relearn that skill of critical thinking that many of us, learned early in college, maybe, but maybe didn't get enough of. So that's an interesting.
I think it's it's interesting. I'd like to know the topic of, I'd like to know the title of the book and the author. I think it's very interesting because I was reading an article myself a few months ago about, board decision making big decisions. And, for instance, if you're relying on let's say you're coaching a CEO and he or she's got to make some big decisions or put some big decisions to the board, how should the board be looking at those proposals? And what's the experience of him or her in making those decisions? What biases do they bring to the table? Because they could say, well, I've had experience with crisis management before, but what actually is the lens that's coming to the table and the experiences have been built up, because that's what's going to drive the behavioral biases. And so it's very important to understand those points. And at the end of the day, everybody's got to do their own critical thinking.
Yeah.
And it's not just relying on someone because they're an expert consultant and they've said to do A, B, C, D. Where's that opinion coming from? Where's the opinion of a CEO coming from if they're making a big decision for a corporation? And it needs to be understood. And I think you as a coach could help push those people a little bit further to look at, when they're putting the proposal on the table, where's their solution coming from? And who are they relying on in coming up with that solution, and what are their biases? Because that's going to impact everything. Exactly.
And so starting with what's my lens and how am I likely to see things, and bringing that to the table. Hey, I don't do tons of research and I didn't read every line of this article. My gut instinct is that we need to do this, is a disclosure of sorts to whoever I'm working with to say, if that's really important, then you need to slow me down and we need to go back and we need to look at those things a little bit more carefully. But you should know that the lens that I'm looking at is, I read the topic sentence of each of these paragraphs and I decided that this is my answer. Right. And so I do think, starting with that self-awareness, how am I likely to be looking at this and under stress maybe, or, on a normal day, where might I need to flex to look at things in a different way? And then how do I flex the sources that I'm going to, and how do I kind of pull that out of people? What might what lenses are you looking at? And how do we know when we need to maybe lean into our natural strengths, and when do we need to flex a bit to make up for a potential blind spot?
Yeah, I think, while we very much, and we'll wrap up, but while we very much at DNA Behavior focus on the natural behavior and the natural strengths and struggles, because that's what will probably come out most of the time, experiences that are in there as well, that are getting put to work in coming up with the idea or the solution, are important to know about as well, because they at the end of the day, they're all part of the mix.
Yeah.
And so how that person situationally is dealing with the problem is important. But if you know the natural behavior like we do, and you're their guide, you can use that to get them to have clarity, or greater clarity in solving the problem.
Yeah.
But Nikki, thank you for doing this. I think we had a great discussion. And
yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Bye.